Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another live stream. And tomorrow evening, Chelsea head to the Emirates looking to ensure it doesn't become 6 defeats in a row under Frank Lampard. Maybe we'll reach 40 points. Maybe we'll score a goal. Maybe we'll win a game of football for the first time since the 11th of March. I looked it up earlier. Last time we won, March 11th, away at Leicester City. No wins
that was my
since
birthday.
then. Yeah, a good day all round. no wins since March the 11th away at Leicester. It's been tough. It's been tough. Bournemouth are now on the same amount of points as us, 39 points. Imagine if I said to you guys in April, game week 33, Chelsea and Bournemouth would both have the same amount of points. No, absolutely no chance. But
I would have said, what a season Bournemouth must be having.
Well, exactly, yeah. So, but that's where we are. You know, we haven't played this weekend. We've dropped to 12th in the table. Roy Hodgson's Crystal Palace have now jumped us. Good job that Brighton smashed Wolves. That was a plus for us. Good job that Leeds lost as well. So we haven't lost ground on those two teams. But mate, how mad is it that we're getting to a point now where we're looking at Southampton's results. We're looking at what Bournemouth are doing. We're looking at what Leeds and that are doing, just to make sure that we don't sort of tumble any further down the table.
Well, really, at this point, what's the difference between 12th and 16th or whatever? You know, it's kind of irrelevant, really.
Yeah, it's prize money.
So,
yeah.
In terms of, like it'll be the prize money, but there's no change in the competitions, obviously. There's no change in, the fact that it's a terrible season, whether we came 12th or 16th. And, we're not going to get relegated either. So that is what it is. I think we are now mathematically safe.
I think it would be. I think it's virtually impossible in terms of like
we'd have so unlikely it just won't happen.
We'd have to lose every game, and then the teams above us, out of the 6 left, would have to win like 4 of their 6 games remaining, which they've basically not done all season. So
it would require form from some of the teams that they haven't hit all season. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, so, it would require a disaster.
It is at the same time, it's a bit of a humbling experience, of course, this season. I've sat down on multiple occasions and gone, how can this get worse? And then it got worse. So, mate, I don't know. It's an interesting one. It is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I tell you what, mate, the only thing that, do you know what's mad, right, is that despite how shit we've been in all the games we've lost, we've still got the 3rd best defense in the league. Yeah. Like, it's not, we're losing matches, and losing is not acceptable at all. Like, in any way, shape, or form. Yes, you're going to lose matches, but everyone hates losing, and no loss is better than another loss. Obviously, losing 10 and losing 1-0, all right, the 10's worse, but you know what I mean? Like, losing is losing at the end of the day, really.
Yeah, same amount of points.
Yeah, same amount of points, whether you've been battered or not. But I just find it mad that our defense is actually pretty decent, yet we've lost so many games of football. I mean, the only thing left to top this season off is for us to get hammered like 5 or 6-0. That's the only thing that's missing from it. It's had everything else, but I guess it just goes to show you that we knew this all along. But I guess now it really shows that our problems in front of goal are so bad. Like, there's no getting away from it anymore.
Yeah, and like you say, with having the 3rd best defense in the league, it's so clear where the problems really lie. I feel like to a certain degree, if the defense ever looks a bit dodgy or a little bit shaky, it's almost more of a symptom than the cause, because nobody in our squad has any faith in our attackers, even our attackers. So we know that the second a goal goes in, we're not getting one back. So it puts everyone on edge. It makes everyone very tense. It's tough, but if you're going to take one thing from this absolute dumpster fire of a season, it's that the defense has been relatively solid, relatively resolute in many cases. I just like to hope that hopefully that's something we can continue to build on next season, and we can sort of maybe build around that sort of Chelsea identity of a strong defense before we, go trying to play sort of champagne attacking football.
I mean, I think it's why it's even more frustrating when you see the fact that we know we're struggling to score goals, and then you see Lampard put out that team against Brentford where we struggle to score goals as it is, and yet we then field a team with 1 attacker in it. Like, that's with Gallagher and Kante supporting Sterling. Like,
when I saw
stupid
when I saw Kante playing there, I was absolutely gobsmacked. I thought, when he himself must have seen the team sheet, he must have gotten a nosebleed. He's never that high up the pitch ever. It's craziness, absolute craziness. What will we expect from Lampard? To be honest, his lineups thus far for us in his second tenure have been pretty poor. Thankfully, we all just know now there's absolutely zero chance of him becoming the permanent manager. So at least we can at least think about that as we careen towards the barrier at the end of the season.
Like 40 points, maybe tomorrow, maybe not. Mate, 39 points.
Maybe.
That's mad. I can't believe we haven't reached 40 points. Like this season's had everything, and yet it's everything that could possibly go wrong's gone wrong. Like, I can't believe a club like Chelsea are in May and they're not on 40 points. Like what?
Like you say, everything that has gone wrong. Well, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, So with all the managerial appointments and the big squad and the injuries earlier in the season and all of that, everything that can go wrong has gone wrong. Everything we've tried to do wrong, everything we've tried to do right, more or less, has gone wrong as well. It feels to a certain degree that there's a lot of good intentions and it's a mix of sort of like poor planning and a bit of bad luck as well. So hopefully with a bit more knowledge and stuff next season, I feel like the owners will have learnt a lot from this absolute disaster. So hopefully next season things will start to pick up a little bit.
Yeah, you'd like to think so. I mean, let's kind of jump into a few things. But I want to talk about forwards for a second. Armando Broja. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him potentially in terms of, he's had this ACL injury, done that interview with Chelsea, the club website, I think on Saturday or whenever it was, Friday, or they put it up on Saturday, whatever day it was. Obviously, he's gonna come back into the fold. We presume it's going to be Pochettino. I mean, do we think that Broja has got a decent future at Chelsea? Because I'm not sure if you've seen the clip of Sterling talking about Broja when he's saying, he's got a lot of potential, etc. He's definitely one to kind of look out for. I mean, I don't know.
He was speaking to Ian Wright, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he was very. I mean, obviously, people aren't going to put their teammates down, but he was like.
But it's like a bizarre choice to pick. Yeah. Like if you're going to, just big up someone for no reason. So there's got to be something behind it.
What are your thoughts on Broja, mate? Do you think he's, obviously, we don't know what it's going to be like when he comes back from the ACL, but do you think that's like a decent option for Chelsea going forwards under Poch?
I think Potter coaches his teams very well on being sort of very fit, very highly conditioned. And so hopefully that will help sort of counteract any negative, long-lasting issues that Broja is going to face from the ACL. We know that he, before the ACL, was actually a very, very fast player in terms of how fast he could run. I imagine he probably will have lost a half a yard of pace because that's normal for players with that kind of injury. He'll come back. I can see him playing in a similar role to the way Harry Kane did for Pochettino at Spurs. They're sort of similar profiles and sort of they're kind of quite tall, mobile strikers. But that's kind of where the comparisons end because I don't think Broja's passing is as good as Kane's. Shooting probably isn't as good as either. Well, we know it isn't. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting one. I think it all depends how he looks probably in pre-season as he sort of gets himself back up to full fitness. In the end, it's hard to know. I think if he goes on loan and doesn't impress, say he goes on loan for fitness reasons or what have you, for game time, and he doesn't impress, it might be time to throw in the towel with him because I don't know, it's so hard to come back from one of those injuries. We've seen it happen to Loftus-Cheek and Hudson-Odoi, two young players who took a bad injury at the wrong moment and it completely derailed their entire career.
Hudson-Odoi is still only 22, by the way. People say he's finished. I'm not saying he's going to make it at Chelsea. I think it's clear that he's going to be sold. But it just goes to show that injury is kind of, you'd almost say it's ruined his Chelsea career.
Yeah, you could say that for sure. The other thing that gives some solace though is a slightly different situation. Poch has a real knack of developing younger players, and Broja is one of those younger players. So with any luck, it could be a match made in heaven. We'll see.
We'll see. It's certainly an interesting option. It really is because I don't know. I look at Broja and I think we've not seen much of him. Obviously, at Southampton when he was on loan, he had a very good first half of the season, and that kind of tailed off in the second half of the season. Kind of a lack of consistency as you'd expect from someone really playing their first full regular minutes of top flight football. We've seen glimpses from him, at home against Wolves much earlier in the season. He obviously got his first goal, took that really well. I think there's potential there, but as you say, at Chelsea now, we need it's all very. We've got a lot of players that could be good in a few years. We do actually need some players that are good right now to complement the ones that are gonna impress over the next few years. So I don't know if the situation we're in right now lends itself to us being able to use Broja as a regular and putting up with the fact that he's not going to consistently put the ball in the back of the net. He's not going to play that well every game. But if we stick with him, he might come good. At other clubs, you can probably get away with that because there's less pressure. And it's easier for you to give more time for someone to kind of develop. Whereas at Chelsea, if you're shit for a game or two, that comes under massive spotlight, and young players are going to be shit for a game or two.
Yeah, they're very inconsistent by the very nature of that. They're young players, and they still got to work out who they are, what kind of players they want to be. They're probably asked to do different things, different weeks. In terms of tactics or positioning, or just little tweaks here and there, or in our cases, total shake-ups in terms of managerial, formations and tactics and all the rest of it. But even game to game under stable coaches and stable clubs, these young players aren't always very good straight away, or they show glimpses of it. I think the key thing for Chelsea is hopefully in Pochettino, we've got someone who can take the sort of player who shows it in glimpses and then push them forward to be someone who shows things on a more consistent basis. And with any luck, that'll be the rule going forward.
I mean, you look at Broja's profile, just put him to one side for a second, but his profile of player, his build, his attributes, etc. Do you think those are the attributes that he possesses that Chelsea should be looking for in a forward anyway? Do we think we've almost in Broja got someone that we're kind of trying to buy, but is a bit more advanced in his development, if that makes sense? Someone like a Broja with that skill set or those attributes, but actually just further into their career, because you could almost argue that we have actually kind of got what we're looking for in terms of attributes, etc. in Broja, but we just haven't got what we're looking for in terms of that stage of his career and ready to do that on a regular basis. Or do you think Broja's profile is just kind of not what we're looking for?
Potentially, yeah, for sure. In terms of the profile purely, yeah, it seems like he's the kind of player that we want. Big, physical, quick. Knows where the goal is. Doesn't mind playing with his back to goal, but can also run down the channels as well. Reminds me a little bit of Lukaku in some ways, or a little bit of Haaland if you're going to sort of use a good and a bad example. So you could argue that we do already have that at Chelsea, but the key issue obviously is the injury and how that's affected him. So it remains to be seen whether actually after his injury he becomes a bit more of a traditional target man striker, loses a yard of pace or whatever, and decides to stick a bit more centrally as opposed to running in behind so much, collecting the ball to feet a little bit more. It's subtle things that might change it if you lose half a yard of pace, but that's all hypothetical because we don't necessarily know how it's affected him yet.
No, we don't, and we'll find out in the pre-season. We'll find out
of
what the plans are for him. I mean, I'd like to think that. Obviously, he was very close to joining West Ham last summer. That fell through at the last minute for whatever reason. He was close to going for £30 million. He subsequently signed a new 6-year contract with the club. So they obviously view him as part of the future, or they just perhaps wanted to get him tied down to protect his value. So they could sell him for a decent fee still. Kind of remains to be seen. But let's wait and see what happens, bro. It's certainly an interesting option. I think it's certainly an option that Pochettino would like to use potentially.
Given how poor all of our attackers have been, he couldn't do any worse. I think, if he's fully fit,
Yeah.
So why not give him a go?
I mean,
people have been calling out for Datro Fofana for weeks.
I mean, I look at Broja and I think the timing of this injury is so unfortunate because the way this season's gone, I actually think he would have played a lot of minutes.
Yeah, he would have played a lot. Him and Havertz probably would have rotated quite heavily. Felix obviously would have come in, but probably played more on the wing or what have you. But I think Broja probably would have played a lot this season. It's a shame because I think he's the sort of player that Potter would have really liked. But it just is what it is. Injuries happen.
It's the way it goes. Mate, moving from one centre forward to another centre forward, the talk of Romelu Lukaku returning sort of resurfaced again. As you would imagine, as we get towards the end of the season, new manager coming in and stuff, potentially a fresh start. I mean, I look at it in kind of two ways. The only way this is anywhere near a goer is if Lukaku himself actually wants to make or try to make a success of his Chelsea career. If he doesn't, then it's finished before that's even started. That is the number one preface to this even being any sort of a go. Even if Pochettino wants to use Lukaku has to want to be here. Simple as that. That's the only way this works. But I look at it and I think Lukaku solves or goes a long way to solving a massive issue for Chelsea. Is that the fact that he can't score any goals? That's facts. We have got a solution to our goal scoring problem. It's just whether we are prepared to bypass what's gone in the past. And I do actually think that in Lukaku, with Pochettino as manager, with better players around him than previously under Tuchel, with potentially you'd like to think more service with a better quality of player around him as well, that this has got potential to work. And I know a lot of people kind of can't forgive what's happened, but they soon would if he starts banging the ball in. So if he starts banging the goals in on a regular basis, that's the easiest way to silence doubters and to win people back over is by doing the business on the pitch. Where do you sit with this? Because I think it's clear for me that Lukaku is going to play some part in pre-season whilst his future gets sorted one way or another. Do you look at it? Are you open to this in any way whatsoever, or is it kind of too much water under the bridge for you?
It's difficult. I think, on the one hand, you've got, you've got the age-old adage and very good advice for anyone in the chat. Don't go back to an ex. It's not worth it. But also, like you say, Lukaku himself matters a lot here as well. We know he wanted to stay in Italy at all costs. We know he doesn't want to come back. We know he really doesn't want to play for us. On top of that, I'm not actually that sure he's the kind of forward necessarily that Pochettino would go for, in the fact that he likes a little bit more to stay in the center. He's a bit more of a target man, a little less mobile. His first touch isn't fantastic, but he does score goals. So it's about, I guess, whether Chelsea and Lukaku are willing to put everything behind them to give it another go. But I'm under no illusions that I don't think that would work personally. I'm sure selling Lukaku would be decent enough this summer as an end to this whole saga, really, considering he's on a lot of wages and he's been on loan, and I don't know. It's just one of those classic Chelsea big money transfers that just never worked. So for me, I personally wouldn't have him back because I think there are better options out there as well. Especially with the fact that we're focusing on a new spine in summer, need a goalkeeper, a DM, and a striker. If that striker is Lukaku, I think the summer is significantly weaker. And I think as well as the only reason the owners do decide to bring Lukaku back for financial reasons is so they can afford to pay for someone like Felix, who I don't think is really that worth it either. So I feel like it's kind of a cascading thing. Like bringing Lukaku back could do more harm than just have him be around.
I mean, if he were to come back, let's just play devil's advocate. If he were to come back, how do you think this time around potentially the setup at Chelsea would be of a better fit to him than it was under Tuchel?
Maybe, but in the same way that he wasn't really a Tuchel striker, he's not really a Pochettino striker either. Pochettino's system needs a lot of pressing, and Lukaku doesn't press, not really, or at least not a lot. Yeah, I just don't think he's all that adapted to the pace anymore of the Premier League. I think he probably prefers playing in Italy because it's a slightly slower pace, but slightly more tactical games, bit more positional game, which allows him to flourish in what he does best. But for me, I'm not sure that translates over anymore to what we're trying to do at Chelsea. It doesn't necessarily fit the mandate of what we're trying to go for, as either with a good squad of young players and a spine of young players. So I think on all accounts, I would lean towards no rather than yes.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think that is fair. It'd be interesting because the striker market, it's in the level of centre forward we're looking for. The market's quite sparse. It's really
a little dry.
You're looking at Osimhen, and you're looking at, I'm a massive fan of Ivan Toney, but like you wouldn't classify him as an elite striker necessarily.
But you
actually,
also, there's massive risk with him as well with the ban. You don't know how long
yeah,
he's going to be out for. So then you've got
that's the one
someone.
thing, isn't it?
You got someone like Kane, but like that's a bit of a pipe dream, really, considering
Yeah,
Levy hates us and doesn't want to sell to us ever. It would be a nice thing to a certain degree to have someone like Harry Kane, because it would feel
that'd
like
be
we're
great,
finally
wouldn't it?
fixing our striker issues forever, as long as he doesn't play in finals. But
Yeah, we're just to find a big game striker. He can be our sort of week to week striker, and then we
yeah,
need to
he
find
can, he
someone for
can
the big
batter in a
games.
hat trick against Bournemouth every week. I don't mind, but it's it's an interesting thing with Kane. There's reports that he doesn't necessarily want to move his family out from London.
Yeah,
He's got quite a young family, doesn't want to move them out of London. So it's sort of, that is a notch against him potentially going to somewhere like Man United. At the same time, we're getting his old coach back in at Chelsea. Probably got a lot of money. He'd be the main man for sure. There's positives to it, but there's a massive, massive thing there in being Spurs, in terms of the fans accepting him, in terms of him accepting the club, in terms of the damage it would do to him with the Spurs fans as well. So I think by all accounts that's unlikely, but like arguably best case scenario, but very, very much not likely to happen.
yeah. I think it's just the obvious links in it. You get like, oh, Potter's coming to Chelsea. Oh, yeah, Kane and Chelsea. Like it's. It's. I mean, look,
it's not nothing, but
it's not nothing. But what I would say is that I think we know for certain that in Todd Bowley, and he's had a lot of criticism, and rightfully so, in certain things. I think he's shown in the market that he doesn't give a fuck what the chances of a move are. He will always try. So if Chelsea are genuinely interested in Harry Kane, I think with Todd Bowley, we will definitely try. We'll try for it. I think that's one thing you can't.
Yeah, we may well try.
You always try, but I'm under no illusions. This is highly, highly unlikely.
I mean, you could imagine him trying to put an asking price of like 150 million for Kane, and then turning around and selling him for 90 to Man United or something like that.
Yeah,
because just Levy just doesn't like us, and at the eclipse of it, that is kind of where that will die. If he just doesn't want to sell, then that's it. It just won't happen. I know with clubs like with Benfica, when we got Enzo Fernandez and they didn't want to sell, but we managed to get it over the line in the end. But that required a lot of pushing from the players' side, and the relationship between our owners and Benfica's owners was relatively good, at least before negotiations, and at the end, in the middle, it was a bit dicey. But I just don't see that sort of thing happening with Kane, just on the basis that, yeah, you've got to be able, the owners have to be able to get on in terms of like a club to club level, and Levy hates us so much that it just won't happen.
Yeah, no, I'll get to a few things in the chat very quickly. Another front three of, that will be depressing. No, simple as that. Do you know what the worst thing is though? Fully expecting it. Maybe not Sterling, maybe someone else, but I'm fully expecting that system to come again, which is it's just I just don't understand how, like, Lampard, who, all right, he's not a good manager, but he's not stupid. Like, how can you have a week how can you have a week to prepare for Brentford and then decide that is the best solution?
As well as, and some of his tactical decisions in game have really been questionable as well. Like bringing on Mudryk once the goal has already gone in. So, like, any chance of playing in behind is very unlikely because they're going to sit back now, you know. Ideally, you want someone like Mudryk to be on straight away for his pace to play in behind, while the Brentford team still has to get forward and commit players forward and take risks. It just doesn't make any sense.
I think his halftime changes in that game, like, the only credit I'll give him for in that Brentford game was the fact that he changed it at half-time, which is obviously an acceptance that he got it completely wrong at the start.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I just don't have any faith really in Lampard to pull out a lineup tomorrow that's even remotely something good. Really?
No, well, I mean, to be honest, no lineup is good for Chelsea this season. It's all of it's been absolutely terrible. But yeah, like, there's no doubt about it that you've got to put a team out that's capable of winning a game, or at least gives you the best chance of winning a game.
Yeah,
like,
and I will say,
no one looks at the lineup that went out against Brentford and thought, we've got a chance to get something in this game.
There was no fear there. Absolutely zero. Nobody's afraid of that team. Nobody. The one thing I will say about tomorrow is it's kind of like our only cup final left for the season. We have the chance to actually do some damage to Arsenal's title hopes, although they've kind of done that to themselves already. It'd be interesting to see if the players decide to turn up for one last game of the season, essentially.
They haven't turned up for any games this season.
Well, there's been like a handful of moments, hasn't there? You could argue one of the games against Madrid. You could argue the second leg against Dortmund. Again, in the big occasions, some of the players decide that they want to play, and they want to play well, and then they do, and it's extra frustrating when they don't. When they're playing against anyone else. But that's just where we are at the moment. But hopefully, at Arsenal, for the Arsenal game, we managed to, just decide we want to turn up. That's kind of the long and short of it. I think if we turn up, we probably do all right. We might not win, but we'll do all right.
I mean, if this season's taught us anything, we know that these guys they don't turn up. They don't turn up. We know that. But yeah, every game we go into, we still hold on to a small bit of hope. Yeah, maybe today they're going to turn up. Maybe they'll turn up, but we know these guys barely ever turn up. Like if it's got to game week 33 and we're still wondering if they're going to turn up, chances are they're not turning up. And like, as whether you agree with it or not, why are any of these players going to listen to what Lampard says? He's not here. He's not here. And like, as much as Lampard's a club legend and we idolise him, it's what's mad is like this next crop of players coming through, these next young guys, your Enzos, your Mudriks, like. They, growing up, they wouldn't have seen Lampard play. How mad is that? Or they would have literally caught the tail end of his career. Like it's
a lot of them, or only seen them really like play when they were quite young, like when like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, tops, right? We got a lot of players like, for example, I'm 25, and I saw Lampard. I think one of the first seasons I remember of watching Lampard was sort of like 2004, 5 or 3, 4.
Those are kind of the first memories really of him.
Yeah, and so some of the younger players, if they were Chelsea fans back then, will have seen them. But yeah, a lot of them, like you say, Mudryk, Enzo, playing for they'll know the name, of course, and they'll have seen certain things of Lampard, but they won't necessarily have watched him their entire lives, like we will, because they aren't necessarily Chelsea fans and we are. So yeah, it is what it is.
It is
I think at this point we're kind of just languishing towards the end of the season. In 4 weeks today, I believe the season will be done finally.
Yes, it will. Yeah, it will be. Yeah, so 4 weeks today.
So May is going to be a great month for all Chelsea fans because we've got extra bank holidays in the UK if you live in the UK,
and the season ends.
And the season ends. So by the time it's June and then it's summertime. So it's going to be beautiful. So there's good news on the horizon yet, Chelsea fans.
There is some good news. I mean a 6-0. I mean if we lost 6-0 tomorrow, I mean Jesus Christ.
It'll be tough, like Arsenal are still technically chasing the title charge.
They're still in the race. As much as we like to banter them, they are still in the race technically.
Exactly, so the only thing that we can kind of hope for them is that we decide we want to turn up and deliberately ruin their day, and the nerves get to them. But I don't know. That seems a little bit unlikely that both of those things will happen. And I think unless both of those things happen, we're looking at probably holding an L again.
Yeah, mate, that's just a default. That's just a default situation now for Chelsea. Just to expect an L. I literally expect to lose every single game. It's so weird, like being a Chelsea fan and going to matches and knowing that on the way you're going to lose. Like it's a really odd situation to be in because we're just not used to it.
No, not used to it at all. It's been very humbling this season.
Mate, it's been really humbling. Lampard is the only manager in the Premier League that lost a game to Nathan Jones. Fair. Yeah, probably is. Nice. Yeah. I mean, we don't know how shit he was. So, Jesus, in good company there. Probably concede 3 to 4 goals. I don't know if we'll concede that many, as we touched on earlier. But defensively, we're not that bad. But you just know that if we go a goal down, that's it. We're not winning the game. Yeah. And that's a really bad place to be in as a team. As a fan as well, knowing that if you concede the first goal, you're finished. It's that's not a good position to be in.
And when you think about it, that it used to be the complete opposite of what Chelsea used to do to people. Is, back in, I'm talking really early days, back in Mourinho's like 400-day thing of whatever it was, not losing at home, or didn't lose a home game in like 4 years or something ridiculous like that. Every time a team would turn up to Stamford Bridge, they knew the second a first goal went in or a second one that the game was done, and there was nothing that could be done. And we sort of live into the opposite now, that the second a goal goes in against us in any game, we know the game's done. So it's a difficult one. I hope we can get back to that former legacy soon, because this season has been a real slog.
Mate, tell me about it. It has been awful. But I mean, do you have any faith going into tomorrow? Do you think there's any chance that we can do anything, or is it just like the inevitable again? Arsenal having not won for the last 4 games, obviously battered at Man City, no shame in that. That happens to a lot of teams. The fact that we're coming to town and they've not won in 4, generally Chelsea's charity FC tag will probably shed its light again. And I imagine Arsenal probably return to winning ways. But you speak to some Arsenal fans and they're a little bit unsure on this one. I'm not really too sure why, because we're probably the easiest team in the league to play right now.
Yeah, I would say so. We're almost certainly. It might be us or Southampton, but even they scored a goal the other day.
They scored 3 at the Emirates as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, and any team can turn up on a specific day. It doesn't look like Chelsea ever will, but, teams do turn up. I suppose, the Arsenal fans know that our team, at least in theory, will be up for it, considering it's our last chance. They're a London rival, we can make an impact on the season in that way. We can really put the title out of their reach if we do win. But it's hard to see that happening. Even though they've lost they've not won in 4. They've been excellent all season. Maybe some nerves and some doubts creeping in a little bit, but that won't be enough to derail them from our absolute mess that we've got going on over here. So I think probably they will win. I don't think that's a bold prediction.
Mate, the thought of Aspilicueta at right wing back against Saka and Martinelli is
it's going to go very well, I'm sure.
It's quite concerning on all fronts. That it really is. But I mean, I just wanted to go through one thing. I mean, it's out again. I mean, I don't really know what it's about. Mason Mount again, which obviously is a really exciting topic. Points to Tom Ruddy in the Times, who's normally pretty good with what he says, that he's saying that Mount's likely to leave Chelsea with contract talks not being revisited since February. Now, that's kind of at odds with what we've got with Ornstein saying that, he had a meeting with Mason Mount and the conversation was described as positive. I'm slightly paraphrasing, but described as positives. But I mean, that might just be a general chat. That might not be anything to do with contract negotiations, because I doubt Mount's not going to be negotiating his own contract. So the two could be a little bit different. It's boring, this whole thing. I mean, do you read much into that and kind of the supposed kind of mass exit from the academy as well? I mean, where do you stand on that as well in terms of Chelsea looking to profit off academy players? I mean, all clubs do it. The academy's twofold for me: provide players to the first team that are good enough, or make a profit. So I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but I can also see how staff within the academy, players within the academy, are going to want to leave to go elsewhere, because they can see that actually the path to the first team is blocked.
Yes, well, yes and no. I think for some of those players will see their path as being blocked. Others will be seeing, if you look at the bigger picture, there's record investment in the youth level at the club right now. In terms of the players who are coming in and the contracts they're getting, even at very, very young ages, and the fees they're commanding for coming in. So I think actually in some ways that might bolster some of the players. Some of the youngsters in the academy think, I can be that good, I can earn that money, I can do well enough here. And now there's an opportunity because these owners care more about the academy than the previous ones might have done. So there's kind of two sides to it potentially. On Mount, I try not to read into this stuff too much, just because he'll either be here at the end of the season or he won't. It's been going on for months. Like you say, it's boring. And the anguish you get from looking at it either way is, it's just not worth it. So, yeah. And then going back to the academy, yeah, some of the players leaving and things like that will be a concern, but at the same time, like we say, the academy is there to make money. It's always been there to make money. It's like you say, it's to build up players who are absolute best of the best of the best for the first squad, which are rare. It's like your Reece Jameses, but they're not very common, and the rest, will inevitably either see limited game time or just won't see any game time and get sold. So I don't know. It's kind of it. I don't mind them having more of a focus on the academy, and I don't mind all the investment that's gone into it. I think it's a net positive thing overall. I also know that the owners might want their own kind of youth players in the squad, like in the academy as well. Rather than from the old regime necessarily. They'll, it might be this summer might be a little bit of a holdover in terms of academy players leaving from when they first came in the first place, because they've had a season now to assess the academy prospects and who they think is good enough and who isn't. And yeah, and they're bringing in people all the time to see who might be better still. So yeah, I think there's reason actually to be pretty positive about it. I think the way that the journalists can report things can sometimes make things look a bit more negative than they necessarily need to be. That's just because the story around the club at the moment is so negative. But overall, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's a massive problem. Like we would potentially be looking to raise funds by selling a lot of academy products or a lot of players that have come through the academy. What I would say is that you've got to be careful. You don't want to get rid of all of them. Of course, they've got to be good enough, but there's a lot to be said for having a core of players that have know the club's values inside out, that have come through the system, that have brought up together. Yeah, there really is something to be said for players that have come through the academy being part of the system. I think it's really important to do that. They've got to be part of the system. They've got to be, know the club, because there's a lot to be said for that. All these foreign guys coming in, great, really good players, but they don't know the same. They don't know what it's like to play for the club in the same way. And there's something to be said for having that extra kind of value installed in you in and around the squad. That's really important. And I think, letting too many of those leave can leave you with big problems. You look at kind of the success that we had with Terry, with Lampard. I know Lampard didn't come through the system, but he spent the bulk of his career at the club. Guys that know what it's like to be at this football club and know the DNA. Like when if you're starting from scratch, then if you're starting from scratch, then it's I've read that as well. If you're starting from scratch, it's difficult. Like, you want to have a group of players that get the ethos of the club, because otherwise you're losing the DNA of the club. If you've got no players that are part of the club's DNA, it's a problem. Like, you run the risk of it being dangerous. And I know you look at Chelsea, and for years we screamed out for academy products to come through. We only had JT for so long, but now you see the likes of Mount, obviously not so much this season, but Mount, James, Chalobah's come from the academy. Loftus-Cheek did as well. Hudson-Odoi, when he was playing, did. We've had a lot of players come through the academy, but then I don't know. At the same time, I'm just thinking that we can't just give chances to the academy just because they've come from the academy.
They've got to be good enough. You've
got to show you're good enough. You have to. We can't just say, Cobham's great and it's this and that. Yeah, Cobham is great and it produces a lot of good players, but ultimately, people need to realise that not every single player that comes through the academy is going to be good enough to play for the first team.
No, absolutely. Case in point, a player like Lewis Bate, who went to Leeds, and have not seen him since. Sometimes academy players simply aren't good enough. That is what it is. But again, it's part of the money-making strategy.
Or you get players that are very good at academy level, and then they make the step up to the first team. They're not quite at that level. You see it a lot, time and time again. So whilst the academy is good, I don't think we should be afraid of selling players from the academy, because ultimately, whether we like it or not, British players are going to fetch you more money. We're going to get more money selling a Conor Gallagher, selling someone like Gallagher, than we probably will for selling someone like Pulisic. That's just the reality. British players, whether rightly or wrongly, there's a premium on them, and
they represent pure profit as well, so they're more likely to be sold too.
Well, this is exactly it. So I mean, yeah, the academy is an interesting one because you look at it now and you just think, well, who are the next guys coming through that academy that are actually going to maybe make an impact on the first team? I I don't. I'm not really sure. I mean, people go on about Harvey Vale. Like, I personally feel that, like, obviously he's a good player, but he would have got your chance by now. I feel personally.
Maybe I know he's
I'm
had
not.
some poor loans,
The
but then
whole
again,
City loan was poor, but I mean, I'm just
you
not
make
sure
your
if
own luck
Vale's
with
cut
those
out.
things,
Yeah,
don't you?
I'm
Like
not
if a
sure if
player
he's.
isn't good enough for a team like Hull, are they good enough for a team like Chelsea? Well, I know there's a lot of context around that, but I mean, you'd probably want to say no, wouldn't you?
I think you'd look at it, and for me, I'd probably say if anyone's coming through the academy, like the next one that's close to making it, you'd have to say it's Lewis Hall, and even he
Or someone
has.
like Cassaday.
Yeah, Cassidy maybe obviously on loan at Reading now. There's a potential there. Then I don't know. Just look at it, and it's just I'm not sure if I'm not saying the academy's drying up, but we've had a very good crop come through. You can't keep producing decent players to come through. There will be a time where these players where you do go for a bit of a dry spell. And I think right now at Chelsea, Santos is not from the academy. So you look at it, and I guess you can also look at it and think when Chelsea signing a lot of younger players as well. In the academy, I suppose you've got to look at it, like, and you must think, well, hang on a second. If someone like Amari Hutchinson's coming in, if someone's like, I can't think off the top of my head now, but these guys are coming in from other clubs at young ages. Surely from the academy, you've got to be thinking, well, where's my path to the first team? Because we're just bringing in players that are exactly the same as me. I mean, I wasn't against the Badiashile signing, but you could quite easily see from Levi Colwell's point of view, like he's basically like Badiashile, and yet, you sign someone that's basically kind of going to do what potentially Colwell could have done. I mean, mate, just on Colwell quickly, do you look at Colwell's path as being blocked at all? Or
no.
No, it's not easy. I don't understand why people think
especially
it is.
with Silva's not going to stick around forever. And we play a 3 at the back most of the time anyway. Poch plays 3 at the back most of the time anyway. Colwell will get minutes. It will happen.
Do you think he's good enough?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I've absolutely no doubt in my mind he's good enough. That you don't have teams like Man City, Liverpool, like Man United, Spurs, rooting around Brighton, even looking at your players if they're not good enough. You just don't. Same with Mason Mount, you can say.
Yeah, I think that, and that's one thing I think that's really key as well, is that when people call players not good enough or not Chelsea standard or whatever it is, whenever you've got a player that you're looking at selling or his future at the club is unclear, always looking at the teams that are interested in him should tell you how good a player he is. And when you look at the teams that are interested in Mount, when you look at the teams that are interested in Levi Colwell, that goes to show that these guys aren't shit players. Because if they were shit, though, that caliber of club wouldn't be interested in them.
This goes to show, though, how much of
like
a multifaceted thing is happening to make us all terrible this season. Yeah, you can blame the managers, you can blame the owners, you can blame the fans, you can blame the players, but it's probably a mix of everything. It sounds like a very sort of non-committal answer. If you were going to put on,
but it's not just one thing. It's not one.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to blame anyone, I guess
everything.
If you're going to blame anyone, you got to blame the owners because the buck stops with them. But at the same time, you can say that they had good intentions with what they were trying to do, but it hasn't worked this time, and you can blame the managers instead. Yeah, you can do, but no, it can go both ways.
You can blame owners, you can blame managers, you can blame players. Like I just think the whole thing as a collective is just been a mess. That's the reality of the situation. The whole thing from top to bottom has been a complete and utter mess.
Totally rotten this season. Absolutely irredeemable.
Yeah. And what I would say is, though, just because I know a lot of people come in and give stick to the owners and that, like, okay, fair. They've got some things wrong. Absolutely right. No issue with that at all.
I think they've got a lot wrong.
They have. But what I would say is that, like, I think it's really just cut them a little bit of slack. I think it's really difficult to come in and have a smooth takeover that quickly. Let's be honest, these owners were playing catch up from the off. It's as simple as that. You're coming under the sanctions, you're going straight into a summer window. You don't know anyone in football. There's no sporting department in place. The one thing that I would criticize them for quite heavily is not getting a sporting department in place like before the transfer window.
That's the thing for me. Is
I don't know how possible it would have been, but surely that's the first thing you do is get a team of people in place.
For me, that's the thing. Is if you're not going to get that team of people in place, don't make business. Don't do anything. It doesn't matter, FFP regardless, because we've seen the results of it this season have been so poor, and it's easy to say it in hindsight. But realistically, if you were going to take over any organization, would you want to change everything straight away, or would you want some stability for a while? No, of course you want stability.
Do you think they've changed things too much too quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially I don't think Tuchel deserves to be sacked for a start. I know it was because they were working around. It wasn't results based why he was sacked, but he didn't deserve to be sacked for what for the relationship breaking down, in my opinion. But it's I don't know. It is what it is. They've made a lot of mistakes. For me, like I said, bringing in all those players before we actually had a transfer thing a transfer structure in place, bringing in someone like Aubameyang, knowing that we were going to sack Tuchel anyway. There's been a lot of mistakes which could have been quite easily sidestepped, I think, and quite expensive mistakes as well that could have been sidestepped if we just decided to just be a bit more stable and just wait, a season. If this season instead we still had Tuchel at the club, we were still implementing these young players, and we were still doing all the things that we were trying to do, but with Tuchel at the helm and just keeping everything as stable as possible, even if you had to keep people like Bruce Bruck and Marina, Granoskovia and Petr Cech at the club, I think that probably, and the groundsman and the medicals team, I think it couldn't have hurt to, put the whole structure in place first. Yeah. And then make all your big changes when things are a bit more stable and people are happier.
I know hindsight's 2020. It's easier to look back, but looking back, I actually think. I mean, again, it's twofold. They would have had to have wanted to stay, and I think Marina probably.
Yeah, that's true.
Marina wasn't going to want to hang about. She's been Roman's right-hand woman for 20 plus years or whatever.
She was not. I think Buck was the only one who could have stayed.
Yeah. So I mean, you look at that, and I just think that actually, that would have made more sense in the summer if it was possible to have kept those guys round for the summer window and then moved them on. And because we know that we had the new thing in for January. But I just think going with an approach where we had no department in place and it's Bowley learning everything on the fly, like that's come back to bite us big time. And I'm not blaming him. It's not his fault. But when you put yourself in as interim sporting director, when you don't know the sport, you don't know, you're forging relationship with clubs, with key people in the big positions at the big clubs around Europe, you're there to be taken advantage of because you're new to the game and people are going to see what they can get away with. Yes, Bowley's a very good negotiator and, people have spoken highly of him, of clubs that have done business with him. But I just feel like surely that's a massive oversight on whoever's advising Bowley and co at the start of the season,
maybe
there's a lot of work to do.
There's stuff to be said about a lot of the business they did in the summer as well, so
only for final has worked out so far.
Yeah, I would say most of the business we did in the summer was a disaster, really. But it's tough because as well, you've got mistakes that they've made. Like, for example, in the summer transfer window, they didn't sign anyone on these progressive kind of like incentive-based contracts like we were doing in January.
Sterling 300k, exactly.
Koulibaly's the same on like 300k as well. So it's what that does is that creates disparities between the squad. We know that we've seen this week that there's discussions about, some players are gonna, without UCL football, are going to be earning less, and some of them won't be, and some of them won't. And it's a good thing. It's a good structure to have in place. But the problem is if you bring in those players in the first place in the summer and you don't have those kind of contracts, everyone's had the same season, everyone's performed poorly, and yet some people will be punished for it and others won't. So
you should be. Surely that incentivizes the players to play better as well. You're thinking like, I've had my wages docked because we did shit as a team, and that you want to earn that money back. So
yeah, it gives the players a chance to give each other like a bit of accountability as well, saying you're costing me money, you've played terribly, and now we're not going to earn or whatever. I think actually having that kind of accountability around the squad helps because hopefully it allows the team to sort of be a bit more cohesive and gel together and, take responsibility for each other's mistakes as well.
No, I would agree on that. I mean, it certainly can't get much worse. That's true. Right, let's get into the starting team then to rattle through this. By the way, guys, keep smashing the likes on the stream. We can do a lot better than we're doing. It's a lovely bank holiday. So, guys, keep smashing those likes. Let's get it up to at least 20. We normally get that quite easily. So, If you've not smashed the likes, keep smashing the likes, and make sure you also subscribe to the channel as well. And if you haven't checked out the opposition preview with AFTV's lead judges from earlier today, then make sure you head over to the channel after we finish and check that out as well. Mate, I've gone with a 3-4-3 because that's what I think that our best system is. Would you agree on that? Do you think we need to go with this? I'm sick of seeing a 3-5-2. It's just shit. It really is.
It doesn't seem to work, does it? Especially. But I know Lampard likes to stack the midfield so that there's a lot of energy and a lot of running and stuff. But I just feel like we need more presence up front, even though all our attackers are terrible. It's just that we need to see a little bit more up there. I don't think we can have that energy. We can even play someone like Gallagher in the front three if we have to, just to make sure that we've got that energy throughout the pitch. It doesn't have to be in a five-man midfield. Especially with playing someone like where you've only got someone like Sterling as your only attacker. It makes absolutely no sense to me.
Doesn't it at all? Kepa's going to stay in goal. I mean, it's not really it's no conversation to be had there. I mean, I've said it before. I do fully believe that Mendy's played his last game for Chelsea, whenever that was. I honestly don't think we'll see him again
back in October, shirt. I guess.
Yeah, we won't see him in a Chelsea shirt again.
May well not. That he's one of the ones on the chopping block in the summer. It's a shame because I think he's at his peak. He's probably better than Kepa.
Yeah. Back three, mate. For me personally, we know it's gonna be Fofana and Thiago Silva. I like Chalobah, but I am surprised that he's been getting the nod recently over Badiashile. Doesn't make much sense to me, that. I mean, for this one, I'd be looking at playing Badiashile. I mean, for you, mate, would you go with Badiashile or would you stick with Chalobah?
I'd absolutely go with Badiashile. He's not put a foot wrong since he's been here, and him being frozen out of the squad him being frozen out of the squad is bizarre. We should only be playing players who are going to really have a future here. On that very basis, Badiashile should play over Chalobah because Chalobah is unlikely to stay necessarily. He's less likely to stay than Badiashile, that's for sure.
Yeah, I honestly don't understand why Badiashile has not played.
I don't either. Maybe it's just the fact of Lampard just doesn't know him. Where he does know Silva, he does know Chalobah. Fofana's kind of the only option at that right centre back spot. Then again, you could play Chalobah there. I don't know. It's for me. It's just one of those funny things because Lampard did this with Tomori as well. Just froze him out of the team. Even then, that was a little bit more understandable because we had like Rudiger and Christensen, and Zuma was playing better
Lampard
at the time.
Didn't like Rudiger either.
Yeah, that's true. He's just got something against certain centre-backs. I'm not sure what it is. So it's a good thing for his development that Lampard won't be here long-term.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'll be going with that. I've got no idea why Badiashile doesn't play. We cannot see Azpilicueta. We love him, but, mate, 2023, Azpilicueta cannot be playing right wing-back. If we're going to go with this system, it will have to be Loftus-Cheek.
It's the only option, isn't it? Despite, the only other option.
Or do we see Chalobah, maybe, with Badiashile plays on the left side.
I think you'd be more likely in that scenario. You'd rather see Fofana as the wing back and Chalobah as the centre back. I think, but although maybe they interchange, but I think Loftus-Cheek does a passable job there, and he's better going forward. And we need something. If we can, we need to get something out of this game. So so for me, I think you can't be looking at playing sort of 4 centre backs. I just don't think that's going to work.
No, it's not. And then Chilwell, obviously, it's going to be Chilwell because Cucurella is injured. So
yeah,
Chilwell's going to play there. In the middle, mate, we know Enzo's going to play. He's been subbed in the last few games. I'm wondering slightly if Enzo started every single game since he signed. I wonder if Enzo's starting to feel a little bit burnt out. I don't want to say like he's not played a lot of games per se, but in fact, he started every game. He's come in, big money, new country. Do you think he's starting to feel the effects of it a little bit in terms of physically, maybe? Maybe,
but at the same time, I think probably best not to read into that too much, until we see some reasoning otherwise. It's for one reason or another, he's not been quite at his top level in the last few games ever since Lampard's come in, really. But I think he probably still needs to play because his quality shines whenever he does play well. Much more so than any other of our midfielders, and he's going to be here for the long run. So I think there's no reason for him not to play.
And I presume you partner him with Kante like myself. I mean, look, Kovacic has done well for Chelsea over the years. I'm not on board with Kovacic at the moment. I think
I'm sick of Kovacic. I must say, I don't think he's been good enough.
He's not been good enough at all.
In terms of providing for the team, he hasn't been good enough. It all looks very pretty, but where's the end product? I know it's not down to midfielders solely to make end product, and the attackers are poor. And the attackers are poor, but it's for me. Even Enzo's come in and started, giving assists and stuff like that, even though it's not that many. He's just providing more than Kovacic ever could. And so I'm just, and he'll probably go on because he's a specialist player, he'll probably go on to play really well for someone like Bayern or Man City or whoever he ends up signing for in the summer.
It's not right for Chelsea.
And it's just not right for Chelsea. This is the other thing where I get quite annoyed because transfers don't have to be good for one team and bad for another.
No, exactly.
Transfers can be mutually beneficial for both teams. In terms of a player who's not performing goes to another club. One club is remunerated for that, and then the player starts playing well, and so everybody wins, and it fosters a good relationship between those clubs. So really, you'd have clubs themselves would rather have situations like that than it would work out poorly. So I don't know.
Just on
fans think
transfers,
differently.
Mate, do you know what another annoying thing is as well? Is that when I'll use the De Bruyne example, is when people say, "Oh, why did we sell De Bruyne? It was so stupid." Like some players are not meant for certain clubs or don't work at certain clubs. So it's really annoying when people say, "Oh, Chelsea made a massive mistake selling Kevin De Bruyne." We didn't, because there was no indication that he would have gone on to become the player that he did if he stayed at Chelsea. If you watched De Bruyne at Chelsea, he was useless. The same with with Mo Salah as well.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, not useless, but there was no indication that
there was glimpses there of clearly there was a talented player, and I think something needed to be unlocked, but we weren't willing. But
not going to be a world beater.
But
but what I would say is that no one was disappointed when De Bruyne left Chelsea. Let's put it that way. So, it's annoying.
At least not all the time.
No, it's annoying when people say that look, we've been far from perfect in the transfer market, but there are certain situations where certain players just don't suit certain clubs, that doesn't mean it's a mistake to then sell them and then they've gone on and done very well elsewhere. That's not the case. Some players won't suit Chelsea. Like Kai Havertz, for example, doesn't really suit Chelsea. He'll go somewhere else and he'll be a very good footballer and he'll do very well for himself. That doesn't mean that Chelsea made a mistake selling him.
Yeah, it just means that he wasn't at Chelsea anyway.
Yeah, it just means that he wasn't right for Chelsea, but it doesn't mean it's a bad move.
No, not necessarily at all. I think when you look at Salah and De Bruyne, I think to a certain degree you can say it's a missed opportunity based on the players that they
missed opportunity for sure
that they went on to become, because it's not like they're just a passable players. We're talking about two of the best players of the Premier League in the last 5 seasons or more. So that if they were still in our side, obviously we'd be having a serious discussion about title charges and Champions Leagues and all the rest of it, because they're both absolutely phenomenally talented. And the fact that we had both of them and let them both go can be seen as a mistake, in my view. There is nuance to that for sure. Like you say, you don't know if they were necessarily going to work out, but I think both of them probably showed enough promise to not necessarily be sold straight away. I think they probably both deserve to be able to see a bit more what they could do, but they weren't given that chance. And that's
it's also a fair point. We also had a very good team at the time as well, which doesn't make it easier. Kante is definitely going to play in the middle there. We know, it's an obvious choice there. He's been superb since he's come back.
If he plays attacking midfield again, I'm going to be absolutely livid.
Mate, I don't understand. I don't get it. Why? I'm not saying that Kante's a 6. He's not necessarily, but you don't want Kante in the opposition box.
No. You want him in the middle of the park.
Why at times is he almost our most advanced player? I don't get it. You don't want him there. By all means, get forward a little bit, but that's not your job.
I'll be honest, I think just Lampard just doesn't know how to use him. And it happened in his first tenure at Chelsea. He used Kante as a sitting DM, which he isn't. Now he's kind of got the opposite problem. He sent him all the way up the pitch when he isn't
number 8 either. I don't know what he is, but
he's just a box-to-box ball-winning midfielder. And that's exactly me. And exactly in that way, it means he should play in the middle of the park, breaking up the play and winning the ball. That should be it. It shouldn't. Yeah. His remit should not be any more complicated than that. That's it.
It's no, exactly. So I don't understand the amount of managers that seem to be misusing Kante in terms of position wise. I find it mad. Like I don't like Kante's not an attacking midfielder yet.
No,
He seems to be playing there quite a lot. But yeah, I mean, hopefully his new contract does get sorted out. Front three. This is always interesting because it's bloody different every single game. I don't want to see Conor Gallagher. No disrespect. It just isn't the answer. He's not it.
no.
Mate, if Mudryk doesn't start, I'm just going to go mad.
I don't know. I genuinely don't know what he would have to do to get a start at this point, considering how poor all the rest of our attackers have been, and considering he's been all right.
I don't get it.
He's not really seen that many minutes. He's looked promising whenever he has played. Really, he had his best game against Brighton in our last game. Since his first sort of debut at Liverpool.
Brentford, he was really good as well in the second half.
Yeah. Even that, he was good against Brentford as well. So he definitely deserves to be starting. I see absolutely no reason he shouldn't be starting.
There literally is
the only thing is if Lampard goes with his stupid 3-5-2, and so there's two strikers, and then Mudryk, where does he fit?
Yeah, it's that's the only way Mudryk doesn't start, as you say, mate, is if he
Lampard fucks it, basically.
He goes with that stupid system, because there's literally no logical reason as to why Mudryk should not be starting for Chelsea every single game for the rest of the season. There is zero logical reason, and no one will convince me otherwise. On the right-hand side, it's a bit more difficult, but it's not going to be Christian Pulisic. It's not going to be Hakim Ziyech. Felix has been out of favour recently. I'm not necessarily against that because he's not been good enough, like everyone. Havertz could be in contention. Lampard was saying in the presser, but Sterling's been shit. I would play Madueke.
Me too.
We got nothing. We got nothing to lose. What we got
it's
to
something
lose?
Different.
Absolutely
he's going to be here. He's going to be here next summer. A lot of attackers won't be, but he will. So he may as well play.
But there's literally we've got nothing to lose. This is what annoys me even more, is that the fact, like, we're playing for nothing.
Yeah,
there's no excuse not to play these guys.
That's even the more frustrating thing with watching Lampard, because he's got no consequences for what he wants to do. So he, in the same way that Potter had almost no consequences for what he could have done, that you could bin players off, send them to the under-23s, put all the youth players on. There are no stakes now. There are absolutely none. You can play whoever you want to play. This game's a bit different because we want to be trying to take points off Arsenal in the last games of the season, but for their title charge, so we can influence the season even in a little way. But it's just, I just don't. Whatever Lampard's been brought in to do, it's not working.
Doing it. He's not
doing it. If it's to bring in youth players, if it's to blood the youth, we've barely seen any new youth since he's come in. If it's to get some players in the shop window so they can be sold in the summer, there's a lot of players in the shop window that we haven't seen. So I just don't get it. For me, I just don't understand it. If it's just about winning games at all costs, well, we've lost 5 in a row. So whatever he's doing and whatever he's been brought in to do, clearly it isn't working.
It's not working. Nothing he's done has worked, and you can't really think of a single positive thing Lampard's done since he's come back in. There's been no positives.
Yeah,
zero.
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, maybe there's things happening behind the scenes that we don't know about, but yeah, on the surface,
visibly on the pitch,
nothing.
On a surface level, nothing's changed. I mean, no. I'd even argue it's worse.
You certainly could argue it's worse.
I don't think that's a outrageous thing to say. And the only thing that's stopping Lampard from taking criticism is legend tax. That's the only thing. Because otherwise he'd be getting hammered.
Yeah.
Though his comments after Brentford were, honestly, they were a disgrace. I was fuming because it's the exact thing that Potter was getting vilified for after every single game. Lampard saying, if we had 20% more confidence, we would have won. What the fuck? What does that mean?
Yeah. How
is that even quantifiable? It's just an outrageous comment. It's so stupid.
It makes absolutely no sense, considering that these players aren't. I don't think they're all that short of confidence. Maybe a little, but I think a lot of it's effort. More than confidence. And so, because these players, we've seen that when they want to turn up and play, they can, because we saw it at likes of Dortmund, we saw it a little bit in the Real Madrid games as well. So when there's something on the line and they want to turn up, they can. That's not about confidence. That's about effort. And so, whatever Lampard's been brought in to do, whether it's to get some more effort into the Chelsea players, to help them with understanding what it is to be around the club, it just doesn't make any sense. For me, Listen, if he wasn't who he was, he might have been sacked already as interim.
Legit. No, for sure. I mean, we've seen it over at Tottenham. Stellini getting. I mean, that was a joke anyway. But Stellini getting removed, like, it's no joke. Like, if it wasn't Lampard, I honestly think that I agree, mate. I think they could have been in big trouble.
It just goes to show as well. I think that the owners, whether Potter had to go or not at this point is a little bit of a moot point, but it's certainly bringing Lampard in for the rest of the season just wasn't the answer. If they were going to sack Potter, they should have done it earlier than they did. If they were going to, or later than they did. Do you know what I mean? The time they sacked him just didn't make any sense at all, especially just before the Real Madrid games as well, when he could have gotten something through it. No, I think again, it's one of those decisions that they just haven't gotten right. And
yeah.
It is what it is. Hopefully next season there won't be these decisions to make, or if they have them, they'll get them right.
Well, this is exactly it. I mean, mate, in terms of through the middle, I'm about to say something that is probably not something I expected to be saying. I don't know. I've been very vocal in saying that we should only be playing players that are going to play some part, are going to be part of the future. But I would actually start Aubameyang. I know that sounds mad, but I actually would. I thought when he came against
I can see the appeal. Makes a focal point for the attack.
Yeah, exactly.
Something
an extra point to prove against
played well against Arsenal, Brentford. When he came on. Yeah, like I see it personally. I would want to see someone like Datro Fofana, but I know that's very unlikely at this point. Yeah. So I think if you're going to pick out of them sort of the usual suspects, I would go with Aubameyang, because Havertz is no 9. He's good on the right hand side, but we've all seen for years now he's just not a 9, and Felix certainly isn't a 9. So if you're going to pick Datro Fofana or Aubameyang, I would pick Fofana, but I can understand the choice.
Yeah, no, I for sure, mate. I would rather Datro Fofana, but I think we're wise enough to know that that's just a no go. It's just not going to happen. But you actually look at that front three with Aubameyang, who obviously at his age now and his point of his career, he's just a guy in the box. I think with tricky players like Mudryk and Madueke sort of providing for him or causing some uncertainty amongst the Arsenal defenders, I think, by no means getting carried away here at all, but that has got potential to possibly cause a few problems.
Yeah, I mean, I do worry a little bit about that right-hand side because Loftus-Cheek isn't going to track back all that much.
Not ideal, yeah.
So I can see the appeal, especially, if it's just chucking Aspi on for a bit of a farewell tour anyway, to get skinned by Martinelli and Saka, it could happen. But, I think this might, on balance, be our strongest team to potentially get anything out of the game. I imagine the lineup for tomorrow will be absolutely nothing like this whatsoever.
Oh, no, mate. I'm fully expecting that team sheet to drop, and it's going to be...
It's going to be chaos. It's going to be absolute carnage. Everyone's going to hate it.
It'll be one forward. I can just see it now.
It might be 2 forwards. You never know.
Just stop it, mate. Stop it. Two forwards on a football pitch. Jesus Christ. I mean... What? This is the state we've got to, that we're hoping we might get 2 forward players on the pitch.
Yeah, it says a lot, doesn't it? Especially with the I think this team looks a bit different as well if the likes of Mount or James were fit. To a certain degree, I'm actually kind of happy in a sense that they're not, because they can just rest up and do what they need to do.
These are all dead games, isn't it, really?
Yeah, with nothing left to play, there's no reason to risk too many players to get injuries or whatever. But we still want to see if we can get a result out of this game. I think if we don't get a result out of this game, I think you're looking in the next games to play the youth players, because there's no point at this point.
No, that mate, I absolutely agree. There absolutely isn't. Only thing that's left to do then, mate, score predictions. We scored 1 goal in January. Not in January. Oh, we probably did score 1 goal in January, but we scored 1 goal in April. Are we going to kick May off by putting the ball in the back of the net?
Listen, I hate to bet against this. It's something I genuinely try not to do, because I always want to keep a positive go of it for the fans and everything like that. But I just don't see us overturning Arsenal. I really don't. I think you will probably lose. If I was to gauge it, I think we lose 2-0. Maybe an okay performance, but still a loss regardless.
I just think we're going to come up short in every department. It's just, And it's not negative. It's just, well, it is negative, but it's just facts. It's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I would love to us to get something out of the game. It's just, I just don't see it happening with their form and ours, you know?
Yeah, the only way that I see us getting anything out of this game is if we park the bus and get a 0-0. That for me is the only way. Or if we get a penalty, or if we get a maybe chance.
That'd be right. Maybe we should have done the lineup based on that. We could play like a 5-4-1, Gallagher as the striker, you know?
Yeah, just pure energy and vibes.
Pure energy and only defensive players, and maybe we'd scrape a draw.
I mean, I predicted us to lose 2-0 against Brentford. I mean, regrettably, I was right. I'm the same as you, mate. I think we'll lose 2-0. We're just not good enough.
To be honest, I hope we don't lose, but it could be more than that as well. You know, I don't think anyone is going. This is a bit like the Real Madrid tie. Nobody's going into this expecting us to win at all. Sometimes that's when Chelsea are at the most dangerous, but this season we seem to be a new breed of inept. So
mate, we're a soft touch. We're the easiest team in the league to play, and our Arsenal won't be fearing us at all. Well, I
think over the last 5 or 6 games or something like that, we're like 18th in terms of form.
Oh yeah, mate, we've got we could even be bottom. We've won no games.
Yeah, I would love to say we're going to get something out of the game, like make it a draw or a win, but it just doesn't seem likely, does it?
No,
especially with their quality, you know, and especially with what's on the line. They're still chasing the title. They know they need a result. It's not our season's over and theirs isn't, you know.
Yeah, there we go. On that positive note, it seems like a good place to round this one out, guys. As always, thank you so much for getting involved in the chat. Massively appreciated as always. Make sure you smash the likes on the way out. Get those likes out. It does really help me and helps the stream more than you could imagine. I would greatly appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't done so already. Heading towards the 3,000 subscribers mark, almost there. Aim is to get there before the end of the season, so every new subscriber really helps. So if you're locked in now and you're not subscribed, make sure you do. Tell your friends, tell everyone about it, and let's see if we can keep growing this thing. Ollie, thanks for your time as always, mate. If people want to check out what you do, obviously on Twitter, on your screen name, and in the description as well. Podcast as well, mate. Where can the people check that one out?
Yeah, just check me out and my 3 other friends on @TheBridgePod. Obviously, I guess it's at the Bridge Pod, you know, on Twitter. But you join our Discord, listen to our podcast. They're pretty good. It's a bit like mates discussing the football in a pub. That's kind of the vibe we go for, rather than anything too tactical or anything too, you know, news based or anything too serious. It's kind of just laughing and jokes and just having a chat with your mates.
Well, yeah, guys, make sure you check that one out as well. It will be linked in the description. So, yeah, I'll be back tomorrow, people, with... yes, I'll be at the Emirates tomorrow. I don't know, I had to think about that one for a second. Yeah, I'll be at the Emirates tomorrow. Match vlog will drop after the game at some point. Sure, that'll be a pleasurable experience as always. And I'll be back on Wednesday with some more detailed analysis of the game itself. So, yeah, guys, until then, if you're in the UK, enjoy the rest of your bank holiday. If you're not, then enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys again soon. Up the Chels.